not as a series of details, so that we can come back or bring back into our mind the formation of a Persian helmet or an ancient Etruscan plate, but the senseness of good, the senseness of fitness, the recognition that in those days great art was produced, great philosophy was conceived, great religion was written. When we recognize that the Psalms of David, among the greatest of religious poems, have come down through over 25 centuries, we know that there was great understanding long ago. And this idea that no one has had any intelligence until the 20th century is quite false. And if there's any doubt about that, the 20th century itself is removing the doubt. Actually, we have received a tremendous heritage of sensitivity. There is a strange refinement that has come to us because we have grown up with the experience of value. We have known in our own background, in the mystery of ourselves, the sacrifice that men have made to give beauty to the world. Perhaps at some other time we ourselves have been part of that group that sacrificed so much. We know those who have died in order that men might live better, that have given themselves and all that they are to the dream of world peace, or to the brotherhood of man, or to the release of humanity from slavery. These great idealists of the past were serving value. What they went through, we have also shared in. We were at one time their contemporaries. Perhaps we were their very selves. But little by little, the whole concept of world value has moved in upon ourselves to become the basis of certain longings, certain strivings, certain desires, which are very difficult for us to put into words, but are the continuing expression of the growing conviction of that which is right, or the fitness of things moving within our own natures. We can see a phase of this in our world today. We can see the struggle that is now going on to preserve what we regard as a fitness. And that is the rights of peoples, the right of people to self-government, the rights of people to freedom and liberty and education, and these things all represent values which we believe to be real. And we believe these values because we have them in ourselves. We neglect them. We may deny them by any specific action of ourselves. We may be unwilling to sustain them, support them, or defend them, but we have them. And when we go against them in some way, we become less than ourselves. When we go against them, we lose respect for our own natures, and we must seek in forgetfulness and escape from that which we are afraid to remember. Thus, value also gives us the concept of things that may be. Now, in the whole concept of life as we know it, man is the only creature that has two propensities within his own nature, as far as we know. Man is the only living thing that knows that he is going to die. All things will die, but man is the only one who knows this. We have no way of sensing that animals are burdened throughout their lives by any fear of death. We know that they are going to die and that they are going to meet it in one of many forms. But there is nothing to indicate that they know it, so that perhaps they are saved of the tremendous neurosis which burdens man and has made him one of the most difficult creatures in the world to live with, for himself as well as for all other creatures. The second thing that man possesses is that he is the only being that we know of who has the power to envision a state in the future better than it is now. He is the only creature that recognizes itself as an architect of destiny. He is the only creature that in a state of war can still dream of peace. He is the only creature that in a state of intense competitiveness, such as we know today, can still envision a utopian world of cooperation. Man, therefore, possesses the incredible capacity to dream of a way of life that is the fulfillment of something better than his conduct today makes possible. Here again we come into Zen and higher Buddhist metaphysics, because actually man's power to dream that he is better than he can be in action actually means that he is already better. Man cannot dream of anything that has not already been attained by himself. Therefore, actually, if man can say honestly to himself, I would really like to live in a world of peace and beauty and harmony and security and friendship and love. If a man can say this and mean it, and experience the need for this in his own consciousness, then that man has already attained that. Only he doesn't know it. Between this internal attainment and his external state remains the problem of his own personality. But he now has a personality that is in conflict with his own principles. This conflict we recognize everywhere. And one of the byproducts of such conflict is psychic illness. Psychic illness arises from the fact that man is growing up mysteriously in his own psychic life, and his material life is not keeping up with it. Now, this would be almost the exact opposite of what we generally think. We say to ourselves, man's material progress has greatly outstripped his cultural, and therefore we are in serious trouble. This is not the real principle, but of course it is the apparent principle. The apparent principle is that our physical progress has gone more rapidly than our morality. But both the physical progress and the morality are on the objective plane. Therefore, man has made inventiveness advance more rapidly than his ability to release his own value. This does not mean, however, that his value is not there. It does not mean that man's scientific knowledge has actually excelled his spiritual knowledge. It means that his scientific way of life has excelled his ability to use his spiritual knowledge, or to be aware of his own psychic integrity or intensity. Thus we are confronted with the fact that man has within himself the great vision that has given him religion, given him art, music, and all of these tremendous cultural things. But he is unable to live personally in a manner consistent with the best of himself. He lives by a compromise. And the more complete the compromise, the worse his material affairs must go. So we have a person whose internal psychic nature knows that that person is immortal. Yet that person himself is a materialist who has no belief in survival after death. Now, this is a curious situation. The only way in which materialism can be sustained is by carefully avoiding the recognition of the internal intensity or the internal pressure of consciousness. To meet this, the individual tries to explain away his own psychic entity. He tries to say to himself, I believe that I am immortal. I instinctively believe this. I can't help it. I noticed some time ago quite an interesting dissertation by Sigmund Freud, in which he was fighting and wrestling with the angels about the problem of immortality. Freud said in one of his books, I want to believe in immortality. I want desperately to believe in it, but I can't. I simply cannot fit it into my concept of the way the universe actually is. So here's a man who has within himself immortality, who can't die if he wants to, and yet is afraid to believe that he is immortal. He is afraid because it conflicts with the structure of his own mind. This is a good example of what Zen tries to reach out and correct. And that is this dominance of the intellect over instinct. This instinct in Freud, which made him say, "I want to believe." This instinct within Dr. Einstein, which caused the same confusion. This instinct, to these men, was merely a residual traditional superstition. To these men, it was merely the continuance of a kind of folk belief. They could not realize that this instinct was themselves. They had to explain it away, because they had to retain the materialism which came to them to be regarded as the symbol of intellectual maturity. But the Buddhists, particularly the Zen, say very simply that if we are quiet like children, we will strangely move into the kind of world that children live in. We will move into a world of beautiful believing. We will move into a world in which our own attitude changes everything. There's a wonderful fable about this in the Buddhist doctrine, which I think is rather to the point. The Buddhist tells us, for example, particularly the Zen sect, that the mysterious fabled otherworldness, the golden shores of Sukravati's blessed land, is not remote, it is here. Certain Christian mystics have held the same attitude, namely that heaven is here, only we don't know it. Bhimi more or less held that view. So did Meister Eckhart. Heaven is here, but we don't know it. And the Zen says, if you will look at a tree from the outside with ordinary eyes, you will see what you see. If, however, you look at a tree from inside yourself with the Zen eye, this tree suddenly becomes the jewel tree of the ancient sutras. This tree suddenly blazes forth into the magnificence of a divine being, because that being is there. This tree suddenly becomes radiant. The earth becomes radiant. All living things seem to be moved in tremendous fields of light and energy. Man, looking from within himself, sees the universe of the withinness of value. And suddenly, as he looks, the universe of tired, weary things, the universe of death and pain, suddenly seems to fade away. And the light in himself, touching all these things, transforms this world into the most glorious paradise conceivable. Suddenly this world is heaven. Everything in it is magnificent, beautiful, inevitable, eternal. And then in a moment, as in the case of Plotinus, the heavens close again, and man is back again into his own small fault-finding sphere of personality. He cannot hold this, not as yet. But if he was able to go to the inward dimension of life, he would find that he is in the same wonderland that makes beautiful the lives of children. The children have not learned to forget beauty. Men have not yet learned to remember it again. So in the forgetting and in the not remembering, we live in a dark world. But this darkness is in us, not in the world. It is our own inability to experience the release of the power of value within ourselves.